if you make mistake and you are not longer interested of this dog, you can also really quickly collect info and delete the request. So that will delete the request. Um, the other function of the My page actually, here you have, this is for actually owner of the dog. Here you have like the all dogs you actually listed for adoption. So we have a Nancy. This is like a short version, short description. Also the older dog here, wide display. This is all my dog wide display for adoption, and I can see the request from the other people. And this app actually has funny function. This is pretty nice. It's called Twila. You can actually, when you are looking for a dog, you can request adoption. So when I hit this button, I actually gonna get notification the owner of that dog, like someone is interesting of the uh, adopted dog. So you can hear in the moment, yeah, I just got on my phone notification I'm interested, and also that dog will pop up on my request. So I will see like I send the request. I was struggling with that a little bit. I reached many software engineer to help me like figure out how to connect that with my app because it didn't really want to integrate. After I think a few hours talking with the other software engineer, a little bit researching, I finally did it. Um, yeah. Um, the thing where I most enjoy, and before that, actually you have like if you're looking for a specific breed, you can like for example start looking for German golden retriever. If you do search, you will see all the golden retrievers. The most enjoy with this app was playing with the Bootstrap. In the future, I will for sure want to like get more knowledge about like Bootstrap, React, jQuery, Angular. That'll be most enjoyable. And I think on the next release, I would like to add actually location. So um, so basically, if you wanna like see the dog on the map, so it will show um, in the small box where the dog exactly on the map is located. Yeah, and I think that'll be all where I want to add. And also a little bit advanced on the picture. I will just show if someone's adopted actually, you will have like a image change for like found home forever. Yeah. Thank you so much. Any questions?
I just have to say that I am partial to this app because when I went through the boot camp, I also did a dog adoption app.
Oh, nice.
And I'm very happy to see that someone else did one too. So I guess one of my questions is, um, have you thought of like any criteria or how you would kind of like have an application for the dog? Like, because right now it seems that it's like approved or not approved. And I'm wondering if in any future releases of this, if you had thought of like any criteria of why someone would be approved or not, and then how you might implement that.
I mean, that would be really good idea. Like so far, I think the most common thing like who came first, they will get approved faster. Who is the first interesting they will get. But I think that would be really nice to add something like criteria like if you have a large dog. You will need to have like yard or be active person so the dog will not see all the day in the home because that's not really healthy for that. So I think that would be really good like adding that kind of feature.
Cool.
Yeah, this is really good. Congrats. I saw Brittany's face light up immediately when we saw the header and whatnot. But yeah, so do you have any idea what you kind of want to go on to next? Like if for a software engineering job, are you more interested in doing like a back end role, a front end, something that's a mixture of both?
I mean, I like both, back end and the front end. I need to admit it, like I really enjoy like really designing that website, that application. So I think if I will have a like opportunity to find really more front end job, that would be great. But I like both things, so
Nice. Well, congrats.
thank you.
Yeah, Camila says excellent. Really, really nice job. So I know in the bootcamp, like you've been learning Rails and Vue.js. Are those the technologies that you use to build this?
Yeah, actually, yeah. For backend, I use Ruby and Rails, and frontend is just Vue.js and Bootstrap.
Cool. And what gave you the idea of doing this particular app in the first place?
I mean, I'm the person who really loves animals. If you ask my friends and family, they will like really say that. Also, I have one dog, and sometimes you see a lot of news like that, like people just uh, see many homeless dogs, running around, and that's really sad. So that website kind of can help, like if someone have actually dog, you cannot afford or something like to keep him, like you post it down to this website and help find a better home. So yeah, that was pretty major thing what I was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's awesome. This is really impressive, Camille. Really nice job. It's really exciting to see this.
Thank you so much. And also, just small thing, you can log in. Don't forget to log in.
Nice.
That's so cute.
Thanks, Camille.
Thank you.
That gift gets me every time. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to Rob. Go ahead and share your screen as soon as you're ready, Rob.
Good. All right, so hey everybody, my name is Rob Kondratowicz. A little bit about myself. I started here at Actualize to pursue a career in development because I really love being creative. My hobbies are mostly around music and art and illustration, so I really enjoy making things that make people go wow. And I'd love to, work in the future on things that help other people get creative, or at least something that would support them being creative. And that's why I developed the app called Bidcast. So Bidcast allows podcasts and advertisers to get connected through a bidding format. So podcasts can post their available ad spaces, and advertisers can place bids to be featured in that podcast. I do want to jump into this right away and show you some of the features and the point of the app. You're not seeing double right now. I do have two screens up. I'm logged in as two different types of users. On the left, I'm logged in as the podcast Pardon My Take, and on the right, I'm logged in as Squarespace, which would be an advertiser. And I'll get to some of this other stuff in a second, but as a podcast, I can list different spaces here with different lengths of time. It's a pretty straightforward process, but you can see here from the advertiser's perspective that they can see where the top bidding advertiser currently is, what the current price is at, the length of that advertisement space, and then when this advertisement space expires, where the opportunity expires after 3 days is what I have it set to now. So you can see the date for that. And then as an advertiser, I can place a bid on a podcast. So right now I'm logged in again as Squarespace. Maybe I want to bid on this first one. I think Dollar Shave Club's blades are dull, so I'm going to try to outbid them for 8,000. And that'll update this table to show that I'm now the top advertiser and the new current bid price is at 8,000. I do want to show that one more time, actually. So on the left-hand side, again, I'm logged in as a podcast. There's nothing here for this last opportunity. No bids have been placed yet. I will, as an advertiser, place a new bid for that. And you'll notice that that updates automatically for anybody who's on the same page without having to refresh the browser. As a podcast, I can also see my closed spaces here. So I can see which of these have expired, who the top advertiser was that I'll be doing business with, and what that winning bid was. You can click on those advertisers' profile pages as well. The next bit of technology I want to showcase is the messaging function. So as an advertiser, it made sense to me that I would want to reach out to this podcast and maybe ask any questions that I might have. Maybe I want to say, hey, pardon my take, how often do episodes air? And that pops up on the podcast side where they can reply and say 3 times a week. So they can communicate back and forth together pretty smoothly. Some other things that are on this page, I mean, obviously as a podcast, I want to show some information like my name, description of the page, or I'm sorry, of the podcast. I want to upload an image that I can show to users. And then there is an embedded YouTube player here, so I can show examples of, an episode of my podcast. I'm going to jump over to another screen here where I can show the main landing page. So if I'm logged in as an advertiser, I can see all the different opportunities that there are for me to bid on across all the different podcasts that are on the site. I can see some of the same information that I was showing before, and then straight from here, I can place a bid as well. But I can also show you all an example of an advertiser's show page. So again, it made sense to me for a podcast to be able to see more information on an advertiser that they might be going into business with. But you can only see this table if you're logged in as this advertiser. You can see all the different podcasts that you place bids on. If you're currently winning those bids, you can click on those podcasts if you'd like, or place a bid straight from here as well. And that's basically the gist of the app. But some of the technology that I worked with, I mean, I mentioned that there was things that were updating on a page without having to refresh. So the way that I did that was I used Action Cable and WebSockets. So WebSockets holds a constant connection between the client and the server, so that communicates in both directions. And then Action Cable manages those channels of data, which I defined in my backend through the Rails backend, and then displayed it through my Vue front end. So that was, again, affecting the bid price, the top advertiser, and the messages. I used Active Storage to handle the file uploads of the images, and that stored those images for me. I also use cron job to be able to schedule a job in the future. So I did that for if a advertisement opportunity were to expire, it would automatically not be listed as active anymore. Some of the challenges that I ran into when building this app was I wanted to make it as simplified as possible and use like as few pages as possible as well. So I had to control what information I was showing based off of the user type or if I'm logged in or not. So that required a lot of logic on the back end and on the front end to kind of control that. For future releases, I think I'd like to have a more familiar messaging function that maybe has like an inbox with notifications, maybe have a built-in media player so that podcasts can maybe upload like a Spotify episode or maybe even a snippet of audio. I would like to also show like a countdown timer, which is kind of like eBay style, instead of a deadline here, and then take advantage of more front-end styling. But next for me professionally, the whole reason again for this was for me to allow people who want to be creative to be successful in doing so. And I know that there are a lot of startups out there that kind of identify that as a need. So I'll be pursuing newer product shops and ideally working with them on front and back end. But that's it for what I had. And let me know if you have any questions.
This looks awesome. I'm really excited about it. And I just want to say, first of all, congratulations. This is really cool. And I know that you probably worked very, very hard on this. And I guess my biggest question is, when was a time while you were working on this that like you really struggled? And then how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was kind of a roller coaster, right? But I was like really excited when I was first working with Action Cable and WebSockets for the messaging portion. It wasn't perfect, but like I didn't require anybody's help on it. I just kind of used the resources that I had, and that was great. But then when it came to updating like the top bidding advertiser and updating those prices, it required a little bit more logic, and I couldn't quite figure it out on my own. So after spending probably too much time on it, I did have to reach out for some help. But that was probably when I was like really struggling and kind of frustrated, but that's why help is there.
Absolutely. Awesome. Congrats again.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rob, this is awesome. It's also a problem that I didn't really consider before. So it's like a very creative project idea. And it seems like you managed to get a lot of functionality in here that sometimes like a lot of behind the scenes work that maybe isn't as like visually not in your face, but like you did so much. So kudos to you. What was your like favorite feature in this to work on?
I think the favorite thing, so it was like really rewarding. It's really rewarding when you work with the back end and making sure that like you have the right association set up and you have the right logic back there, because you can't like see it right away,
Mhm.
but you have to put a lot of work into it. So once I got like the right information showing for the right type of user, or if I was logged in or not, even though like I might be on the same page as one person and the same page as a different person, I was controlling what was being shown. And that to me was like super cool. Like instead of having everything on separate pages, I was like, I'm actually nailing the, like the wireframe that I had set up. So that was rewarding for me, and that was probably really fun once I got it working.
Yeah, that's great. Well, especially since you have two different kinds of users, I'm sure that was like very important to you. So well done.
Thanks.
Yeah, Rob, this is amazingly impressive. Really, really nice to see this. What would you say like would be like the big takeaway from you in working on this project? So like you learned, the skills in class, but now you applied it to a project. Would you say like what's the biggest thing you've learned from like applying the skills in a real project setting?
Staying organized and like taking things one thing at a time. I think we're all probably guilty of this, and it's probably part of the point of the project, but you can find yourself like running into problems and getting distracted by them and kind of forgetting what you were working on and working on something different, and then going on to something else that's breaking, and it's kind of a rabbit hole. So just focusing on that Trello board and really taking one thing at a time, step by step, was something that I had help with after a few days of working and being frustrated. That helped kind of get me back on track.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, this is a really cool project with lots of cool features. I have to ask about the logo. Did you make that logo?
I made the logo. I do recognize that it kind of looks like a Disney logo, but I think it's dope. So
That's cool. That's cool when you see Capstone with their own logo. So really nice job, Rob. Really great project.
thanks.
There's nothing wrong with it looking like a Disney logo. Yay,
Right.
Disney.
Everybody else rips them off, right?
All right, thanks, Rob. That's great.
All right, thanks.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Steve. You're up to bat. Go ahead and share when you're ready.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Batch. I'm a software engineer and recent and proud graduate of Actualize. Before my career as a software developer, I was a software sales professional, and before that, a teacher. And both those careers, I had the privilege to help people. And I made the jump to engineering because I wanted to really solve complex problems and help people on a grander scale. And I was really curious about technology. And that's why I built my app to help people. And that's what it's called. It's called Gratis, which is Latin for gratitude. It's a smart journaling app that helps cultivate and strengthen your gratitude over time. And gratitude's been studied as a virtue that helps improve your emotional, mental, and crazily enough, even your physical well-being. So essentially, you can think of my app as its intent is to improve people's quality of life. Let's dig into it. So what I'm showing you right now is just basically an index of all the different journals that I've written over 2 weeks or so. Some of them are obviously fake, lorem ipsum, and some of them are actual real journals that I've written. But it all really begins with actually starting to create a journal. And we do that by clicking on the reflect button or tab in the navigation bar. So when you actually start to reflect or write a journal entry, there's a prompt that's given to you to help you get started with your writing. In this situation, we're going to be asked to write about a challenging person in your life. That's going to be Josh Nixon. My teacher, he challenges me quite a bit. What qualities do I like about him? He is very earnest, has integrity, and he's wicked smart. For all those reasons, I love Josh Nixon and I'm grateful to have him in my life. So I'll submit that journal entry, and we could see here's my journal entry written down here. But now the app's going to ask you to score your journal entry. And this gratitude level attribute is the key that really kind of helps make my app unique versus other journaling apps. So on a scale of 1 being the lowest level of gratitude and 10 being the highest level of gratitude, the app's going to ask you, how do you feel after writing this journal? So let's say I score this as a 10. Because every reflection that you write has a prompt and each prompt belongs to a topic, when you state that a current reflection gives you a high level of gratitude, the app that I built takes notice of that. So the next time when you start to write a reflection, the app will increase the probability that the next prompt you get will be from a topic whose prompts have historically given you a lot of gratitude in the past. Now, this is all done in an effort to ensure that you as a user, your gratitude levels, one, stay very high, but two, that you want to continue to journal so that you could reap the benefits of gratitude. So this is all done in that effort to improve your quality of life. Afterwards, we're going to say, since journaling or since my last journal entry, have I experienced less gratitude or more gratitude? Let's say more gratitude, and we'll hit submit. And now we can see that entry here, 3/26 of 2020. If you want to get more granular with the journal entries, you could obviously click into them. We could edit them. Let's say maybe this actually was not a 6, but actually was a 5. I was being too gracious that day. We could update it. We could also delete journal entries too as well. And the real kind of magic behind the app, though, really exists inside of the report or the analyze tab here in the nav bar. So by clicking on analyze here, we're going to get a full functioning report of your gratitude. Here's where we can actually look at the data that we've inputted while we're journaling to get some really cool insights to help further our growth. So we're going to show you the total reflections that you've written. So 16 total, how many days you've journaled consecutively. So 12. So obviously I took some time off there because every day that you do not journal, the counter goes back down to 0. The intent behind that was obviously to keep the streak high, to keep you journaling, to keep yourself feeling gratitude, to improve your life. Your current level of awesomeness will always be 1,000% in the app because you are awesome. And then I used this technology called high charts to visually represent my data. We could see on the x-axis, this is the last 7 days. On the y-axis, this is how many journal entries you've written. So we could see that on 3/23, we wrote a total of 2 entries, and every other day we've written just 1 entry a day. And the most exciting pieces of the data, I think, in my opinion, are these 2 pie charts down here. So this is where we could see what were the topics that you wrote most about. So people and yourself being pretty big topics, and health and nature being 6.3% and 6.3% respectively. From this data, we could indicate most likely that you scored people and yourself prompts very high, and you're more likely to get prompts about yourself and people moving forward. It doesn't mean you're not going to get topics or prompts about health or nature. You just have an increased likelihood, the way the code is written, to get more prompts about the things that have elicited more gratitude in you. And then obviously we could see overall, what was the quantity of gratitude that you experienced since you began using Gratis? Was it more gratitude, no change in your gratitude, or less change in your gratitude? And if things are going well, you will have experienced more gratitude each and every day, thus improving, your quality of life there. High charts was interesting in the fact that it was a technology that I had not used before. And this technology was one in which I did have to get some help with my instructor. But a key takeaway that I learned was I have to pay attention to the data that the charts require, and then make sure that I'm getting the data in those data structures to provide to the code to then manipulate and show the data in the way that I wanted to show it. But I really hope that I could continue moving forward in this career in a field revolved around software engineering, where I'm helping individuals and helping them change for the better, or helping lots of people change for the better. With that said, I want to thank you, and I'm grateful for your time.
This looks amazing, and I'm really, really excited about it. First question is, have you put this app up on Heroku? And if not, when are you going to do that so that I can start using this?
Yeah, it's not on Heroku just yet. And I looked online for other gratitude apps to see their names. I think some other loser took my name of my app. I'm just joking. I'm sure they're not a loser, but I'm not sure the copyright stuff with that too. Like, can 2 apps have the same name? I don't know. It'd be weird if there was 2 Ubers, right? Like a really kind of startup named Uber that's trying to take on Uber. I don't know. But yeah, I would love to get it on Heroku. I would love to have actual users start working with it and feel all the good vibes from gratitude. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is great. And it's very also like aesthetically pleasing, which I think is like was probably part of your whole plan with something where it's supposed to be like calming and feeling gratitude. So that
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
a shoe
very
in.
fun.
And then I'm curious, so you mentioned, depending on how high you like rate something in terms of gratitude, it's more likely, like that topic is more likely to come up possibly on your next time you have a reflection.
Yeah.
Is that logic that you implemented yourself, or do you use any like third parties to kind of help with that?
Yeah, the third party was named Josh Nixon. He definitely provided a lot of good mathematical advice when it came to something like this, with like probability and just randomization and increasing the likelihood of something popping up versus something going down. Like Natalie, you brought up a good point. We don't want just to have only the topics that are providing you the most gratitude. We still want the chance that you're going to get another prompt from a topic that maybe hasn't given you a lot of gratitude, but maybe this prompt will. So yeah, I definitely researched, different things online when it came to like just statistics and percentages and whatnot. But really, Josh just like really sat me down. We had like a math session for a little bit just on, hey, like this would make the most sense for your app. And I was concurring with him or disagreeing with him, and we kind of had a back and forth and moving forward. But putting our two heads together, the code eventually then made really a lot of sense to kind of write itself,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure Josh helped a bunch, but you wrote the codes. That's very impressive that that's all your logic in there. Great job.
Thanks. Yeah. And that was probably the most rewarding part of the app, just getting it to function the way I wanted it to function.
Yeah, this is awesome, Steve. Can you dive a little bit into like how that logic works in terms of figuring out the topics that they've chosen and all that?
Yeah. So the way it works is you have, if we go back to like my analyze section, we have like 4 different topics. And initially I had like different ideas for different topics, but with the time kind of given and what we had, I didn't want to, have 26 different topics here. Just kind of 4 seemed like a good amount. And I wanted to make sure I had like 5 or 6, maybe prompts each for those topics. So essentially, it's working by a lot of the associations and the different like tables that are existing inside of the backend. So because each journal entry has a prompt, when you score, let's say this as a 10, over time, if you keep scoring those prompts that belong to, let's say, the topic of health with 10s, we start adding up the actual sum of those totals, and we divide it by like the total sum of all the possible, so the total sum of all the journal entries. And then based upon that, we create a series of conditionals where the method we called it was I called it the roll the dice method, where essentially we're taking kind of like a random number. If the number is a 1 through 10, then the probability of you getting a health topic increases by this percentage and that percentage, and it kind of builds on top of each other. I know I'm not making a ton of sense right now, but
No, it does. It does. So these prompts, I guess one thing I didn't catch before, but I think is coming clear now. So these prompts under the hood are categorized into certain topics, right?
Yes.
It doesn't say here like what the topic is, but under the hood, it's
right. So each journal entry belongs to a prompt, and each prompt has an attribute that is a topic.
I see.
So yeah, it's kind of the only way you really see the topics is by going to the analyze page, and there are the topics themselves. But yeah, that's all under the hood though.
Yeah, awesome. I think the whole idea of seeing like emotion quantified in this way is really a fascinating idea. And it's really well executed. So congrats, Steve. Really nice job.
Thanks. I appreciate that a lot. Thanks for all the feedback, everybody. I appreciate it.
Nice job, Steve.
Thanks.
I love this end of the practice. I'm the challenging person or your fear, I think was the practice one.
Yeah, before I demoed, I made it a mission statement to just always say Josh Nixon, and you would always fit into whatever prompt that really came up. There was a question that said, what went wrong in your childhood, and how did you grow from that? And I was going to say Josh Nixon was not in my childhood, but then I met him later on, something like that. Yeah.
Very nice, Steve. Excellent presentation.
Thanks.
Let's go ahead and move on to Tom. Tom, go ahead and take over whenever you're ready. Excellent.
Okay, it took me a little while to find the unmute, and
There we
Zoom
are.
sent me a message that said my internet is unstable. So if you pray for my Wi-Fi. So yeah, we'll start off from the top, I suppose. My app is called Boulder Buds. My name is Tom, and Boulder Buds is an app for climbers, similar to popular forum websites like Stack Overflow or Reddit. And I came to this idea because I'm a very active person and I wanted to build an app around one of my favorite activities. So while I was brainstorming, I narrowed my subjects down to running and climbing. And while I was thinking about it, I realized that I'd used a handful of apps for running in the past and never one for climbing. So let's take a look at Boulder Buds. This is the homepage. It's got our 4 main categories: advice, beta room, gear room, and feedback. Feedback is a place for users to obviously submit feedback on the app. Gear room is a place for users to review, the latest shoes they got. They can trade with other users, sell with users. It's really at their discretion. Beta room is kind of a place to brag. If you have a recent accomplishment in your climbing, this would be a place to post about that. And advice is a place for climbers who are struggling and need some feedback from the community to kind of get over whatever the hurdle is that they're dealing with. So we'll go into advice. Any post that is tagged advice is going to show up here. Before I get into one, I just want to show how to create one. So you'll select a category, give it a title, a body, and then you select a photo. We'll take one from my desktop. This thing is getting in the way, but we've got past it. Okay. So while these are uploading, they're going to Amazon Web Services, which is cloud storage. It's called an S3 bucket, and I wanted to use this technology as one of the critical features on my backend because images are really an important element of the site. And with AWS, I knew I could be confident that if the user base grows, my app would be able to scale with that, and I wouldn't have issue with users accessing their images, or as we'll see down the road, editing their images. So this is the post that I just created. You can reply and start a reply tree with just a text response. Shows up down here. You'll notice right away, I created a voting feature. So each user can have one vote on an answer. And this answer is attached to the question and the user using what's called polymorphic association. So it'd be pretty common for it to belong to a user and a question. But when I go to a post that has some more answers on it, we'll see that it creates kind of almost a Russian nesting doll where answers can have answers and those answers can have answers. So to access those on the front and back end, on the back end, I wrote recursive functions to be able to access these kind of nested elements and see how deep we can go within that Russian doll. And then on the front end, I did a similar thing with a component in Vue that resulted in it displaying in this tree format. So another feature of the app, I showed that you could respond to a question with a text response. But you'll see that some of these have image responses that are marked up originals. So we'll go to the image edit page. So we see the original image that's been posted, and we have a cool, this image editor, the entire thing that you're seeing right now, comes from a third-party library that created a few components, the color selection over here, and the toolbar up here. And it gives you some features like text, arrows, and you can even have a pen tool to mark up where you're talking about. And then you submit a little text with that. At the current version, you have to save this marked up image to your downloads. Then you quickly just select it and re-upload it. And then, yes, your recent edited image shows up in that answer tree. So now the last thing that I want to show is just the user profile. Or I'm sorry, I want to take one step back. As I replied to that question, can't really see it on this desktop, but I want to take a step outside of the app for a second and go into the Twilio console. We'll see that the most recent text came out from my app saying that somebody has responded to this original post. And Tom at tom.com has replied to you on Boulder Buds, just so you know that your post isn't out there and nobody's seen it. It lets you know that you have some interaction on the site. The last thing, you can go to your user profile. You can view any user's profile to see, where they're climbing, where they're from, a little bit of information about them, their whole post history, and all the answers that they've ever had. I feel like people like to have a snapshot of their activity on a site, and this is where you do it. On your own profile, you can edit it. So if you got a new number, you would change that to still get notifications. Your home crag, like where you're usually climbing, you can change that in your location. So yeah, that's my app. Happy to take it. Any questions?
This is really cool. I've never seen a climbing app before. So congrats. I know you worked really hard on this and it looks great. My biggest question is I want to know a little bit more about how you integrated that third-party photo editing tool and also any challenges that you've overcome while working on this app.
Sure. So the photo editing tool, I created a canvas component on that page and kind of put the tool in around it. One of the really difficult parts, my brother's roommate, Annie, actually helped me out a lot, was pulling from my AWS and filling the canvas with the original image. So that was probably one of the things I struggled with most. But the third party that created that tool, they made one for Vue, they made one for React, different JS frameworks. So it was kind of once I got my canvas in there, I was kind of building around that. And the most challenging part of it was definitely getting my image to show from AWS.
Great. Cool.
Yeah, this is great. It seems like you really got a lot of functionality in here and it's very impressive. I also loved how on some of the posts you had some like very snarky comments between people because it's very reminiscent of Stack Overflow. But so I'm just curious, what made you want to get into development in the first place?
Yeah, so I'd worked a few different jobs in tech, and all of them kind of seemed at one point or another like I was standing still and doing the same thing every day. There wasn't a lot of excitement in my day-to-day. So I at one point in a job found myself doing a lot of like HTML and CSS work, and I was like, I think I'm kind of just in the kiddie pool here, and I know that there's a deep end. So eventually I found out about boot camps and the ball kind of just kept rolling from there.
Nice. Well, with the amount of stuff that you were able to get into this app and the fact that you had even the forethought of like how things can scale, and that's why you wanted to do AWS, it seems like you made a very good decision. So congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is super impressive, Tom. Lots of different features. Curious to know your approach, or maybe has your approach changed because you've worked with a bunch of like, third-party things, right? You have S3, you have that, the Canvas thing, you have Twilio. Like, have you found like an approach of like how to tackle working with like third-party tools and APIs and that kind of stuff?
My approach was definitely setting deadlines and understanding where my stopping points were. One thing about my app that I would have loved to figure out for this version that I didn't quite get to, on the image edit page, I don't love that you have to download your edits and then re-upload them. I wish you could just hit this create button and it would post, but that wasn't something that I could get to. It was sometime last week that I ran into this and I was like, okay, I can either keep going down this track, use another day, or I can accept this as it is. It's fully functional and get to the rest of my app that I wanted to get to. Kind of throw it on the back burner until I had time for it. Didn't get to it, but that's, you have to make compromises. You can't be married to these types of things. If you have something that works, you got to roll with it.
Got it. And that sounds like a good approach. Which of the aspects was the most challenging? It sounds like this one. I guess after this piece, was S3 difficult, or at least uploading to S3? Was Twilio hard?
Nothing was that hard. It came pretty naturally to me. I'm just kidding. There was a few very difficult parts. I would say that in my MVP, I was uploading images to active storage and transitioning from. It was working with this canvas element fine. Transitioning from active storage to S3 was that was a big hurdle. Took a while to do. Even getting the image to appear from active storage in this canvas, that took a while. I was working with Patty at different points, Nick, Josh, everybody contributed. So it was a group effort there. Another thing, it was hard to get. I knew that I needed to use recursion for these comment trees, but I needed help just getting, where do I put it? And Josh was a big help with that. So my MVP, he helped me get there. It wasn't in this tree format, but then as I was implementing my theme, it all kind of came back. My sessions with Josh, and now we have this tree that is, it looks okay. I don't love it, but it's it's all right. So
Cool.
I would say the recursion and the AWS, those were two really difficult things to work with.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
They were valuable.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how that recursion works when we get a chance one time.
Well,
Sort of
front end
blow
and
my
back
mind.
end. We can sit down with it.
Sweet. Well, really impressive, Tom. Really, really nice job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Jamal, we'll have you take over here in a second while I comment on Tom. You got through the whole thing. Whatever Wi-Fi gods you prayed to, you got through the whole thing, no cutout. So awesome.
Thanks to my family too, and thanks to my buddy Sam for designing this logo. So we're very blessed.
Looks very good, Tom. Jamal, you can go ahead and take over as soon as you're ready.
All right.
Also, I'd like to point out that Tom's communication picture is about one person yelling in another person's ear. I love that every time I see it too.
All right. Good evening, folks. My name is Jamal Newman. I'm an Actualize graduate, and I would like to just take a few minutes to describe to you my application called HomeSafe. So staying out late with friends and family can be a joyous occasion, but the thing is that when everyone goes home at night, how do we all know that everyone did in fact get home safely? So that in fact is a problem that my application solves for you. The application allows you to create a group with a common starting point, and then as well allows you to create various ending points. And then when a person does arrive home, it allows, the application sends out a message to each member of the group saying that, hey, Jamal in fact did arrive home. So how does my application do that? Let's dive into it and figure it out. So once a person logs in, this is the initial landing page that that a user lands on. So if a person needs to edit their personal information, they can do so, and by clicking update there. The second part of this page, give me 1 second, please. Let me just move this out the way. The second part of this page is the previous journeys that a user has been on. I thought it was important to list the date that a journey was created, as well as starting and ending location as well. And if a user uses the application quite often, this can become cumbersome or it can become too much, so they can just simply delete it. Now, again, for every journey or for every trip, again, a starting location and ending location is needed. So per the instructions, it states that if the drop-down list does not include your starting location, your starting or ending location, please create them. So if the location does not exist here in this drop-down list, this form would be filled out, click enter, and then that would populate this list down here with the new location. So as I mentioned, a journey or a trip needs a starting location, correct? And again, that's going to be a common point, or that's going to be a common point for all members of the group. So say, for example, we're all going to start at Actualize. We click this journey and it brings you to this page here. that advises you where you're going. So you're going to actualize, the address is 215 West Ohio Street, and the following are those who will join you. The user is automatically going to be in the group. And if the user wants to add anybody else into the group, he'll just select from this list right here. Say, for example, I want to bring Josh with me. I click Josh. And if I want to add somebody else with me, John Doe, I can as well. But you also have the option of deleting that user as well. So at this point, we have a starting location for everyone in this group, as well as creating a group, which currently includes myself and Josh. And if you click go, it takes you to a last page that brings up a Google map and allows you to select an ending location. Now, I gave this some thought, and I initially was going to display all the user. I mean, I was going to initially display all the routes for every single user so that everyone can see where everyone else is going. But then I gave it further thought, and I was like, but if there was somebody in the group or someone new to the group that I didn't feel comfortable with, I would not appreciate him or her knowing where I live or where I was going. So, based upon that notion, I was like, I thought it was best that a user only individually sees their own route home or their routes, their own location. So if we start at actualize and say, for example, I'm going to Jay's apartment again. So we have a common starting location between all members. We created a group, and now we're going to, each individual user is going to create an ending location for them to go home or for their own destination. So if we click display route, it'll display the route for us. Where actualize is down here, and this will be the route home to Jay's apartment. Now, what makes I think my app a little unique, or it allows us to stand out, is that if we just zoom in a little bit, I'll show you what I'm referring to. The cool part about my app is that when a person gets home, right, instead of actually having to pick up the phone, to call somebody, be like, hey, I got home, or to text somebody, hey, I got home, the app automatically does that for you. So there's logic on the back end that says, hey, when a person gets to about a half block radius to their location, the application triggers a function on the back end, which it sends a message to each member of the group saying, hey, Jamal got home. And that would look something similar to, this right here. So I use Twilio, and it says that, hey, Jamal arrived at his destination. So this is the message that each individual member would get once I get within a half block radius of my ending location. Now, as far as the different technologies I use, I think that was in fact the hardest part for me personally. I mean, because I used geocoder, which takes in an address, and it takes an address and turns that into latitude and longitude, which then feeds that over to Google Maps. And then Google Maps plots that on a map, but it also has and in combination with Google Maps, there's also web browsing technology that allows you to continuously monitor where you are every so often to make sure that to make sure that you do get home. In addition to that, it was Twilio as well that I used to send out the notification, to every member of the group saying that Jamal or whoever else did in fact get home. And what I mean is that to use the different technologies together and have them incorporated, and all talk to one another, that in fact was probably the most difficult part because there's so many different moving parts to it. The motivation for this app so the motivation for this application, my apologies, was my previous experience in law enforcement. I spent about 6 or 7 years in that field, and being in that field gives you a safety first mindset. And as well as, I like to go out, I like to have fun with my family and friends. And then I worry whether or not every individual that I'm out with did in fact get home. So those two coupled together allowed me, or gave me the motivation to build this application. The next set of steps, or next release, I guess I would want to take this application from being web-based to something maybe on an iPhone. So, it's easier because I don't want to have someone to log into my application, to start a group, to start a location, to log back in. I think it's much, much easier on a phone. And as far as where I see myself down the road, about a year or two, it's open. I love technology. I'm just happy to see, the different technologies that we've learned so far and see where it takes me. That being said, I would love to open the floor up to any questions that anyone may have.
Looks like you got a lot of cool functionality in here, and I want to say congrats. This looks amazing. I felt like I had so many questions, but then you just kept answering them. So I guess my big question now is kind of like, what do you see next steps for yourself?
For me personally, again, it's just to get out there into the workforce. to expand upon my skills. I would love to get into something that's security based, just because of my previous experience. But then also security, because I mean, I don't know of a field out there, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's government, that security is not such a big part of in today's date and time. And a person who's in that field and who has programming skills, I mean, it just makes yourself that much more marketable. And it opens up that many more opportunities for you to grow and to learn and so forth.
Well, great. Congrats.
Appreciate it.
Best of luck.
Yeah, this is awesome. And it's very evident that you thought through so much of like the practical use cases of this. I mean, one, like my sister would love this app because she always texts me to ask when I get home and I always forget to respond to her.
Yeah.
But even the idea that you mentioned of like maybe not knowing someone super well and not wanting to be able to see like where exactly you're going or your home address. I mean, it's clear that your background really helped in coming up with like how this app will function. And that's awesome. So then, and you also mentioned kind of wanting to go mobile, which was going to be one of my questions, but if you had another week and like maybe you didn't want to like dive into building a mobile app, like what would be the next feature that you'd want to get bake in here?
I honestly think that my next step would have probably been a mobile app, because I thought about if I take this, say for example, I put this onto an iPhone or an Android, then I would also add a feature such as like a panic button. Say for example, you're on your ride home, something happens, an emergency pops up, you click the panic button, it sends a message out to everybody, be like, hey, Jamal's in trouble, send him a message, call him, figure something out. Because you never know. I mean, like say for example, you go out to a bar, your friend gets drunk, you use his application, he's in the Lyft ride, he's on the way home, something happens, and he's just coherent enough to know that something's not going right, something's not going correct. Clicks a panic button, sends a notification out to everybody. So now you have 5 or 6 people, whoever's in your group, trying to find out where you are, trying to make sure that you do get home. So I mean, I think that would be my next release. I mean, there was so many different ideas rolling through my head. I mean, it was a fun project to work on, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely. And like, once again, I mean, you obviously have so many different ideas for this, and it's very evident that everything is very well thought through. That, I mean, it's just more motivation to keep working on it and try and get it out there. Great job.
Congrats, Jamal. This is really impressive how you integrated all those different technologies together, like you mentioned. Which technology would you say was the most challenging, excuse me, and which was the most fun? And it could be the same answer for both.
I think it would be, I would say a combination of Google and how the web browser tracks your location as you move. So watch position. So there's a feature called watch position within web browsing technology that continuously sends out a ping and continuously monitors where you are in real time. So learning how that works and learning how you can build upon that, I think to me that was the most rewarding. Plus the fact that it took me an entire weekend to figure out, and how different, like for example, Chrome and Safari and Edge, and how it acts differently within different web browsers, if you will. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that to me was the most challenging, at the same time the most fun, because I was talking to Josh and said, when I finally got to work and I would go outside in the snow and try to walk around the block to make sure that my location was actually updating. So it was challenging, but it was also the most exciting.
Yeah, and that's a good sign that you find the thing that's most challenging also to be the most fun. That's a good hallmark of a developer.
Yeah,
it's a really nice project, Jamal. Really impressive.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well done, Jamal. We're going to cap it off here with Jess as the final presentation. While she's getting that ready, I'll just say it's fun that Jamal has, I think, one of the only features in all of these apps that was changing depending on the weather. So you can only test it so much if it was snowing, and if it was clear the next day, it was easier to test. Way to go putting it all together, Jamal.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm having trouble getting the screen share thing to come up.
Let's see.
Okay, first student to experience.
I can hear you, but you're kind of soft. Can you speak up, Jess?
Sure. I'm having trouble getting the screen share thing to come up.
Okay.
Second.
You see something at the bottom of the screen that says the green button that says share.
There we go. Okay.
And make sure to click yes.
Mhm.
There we go.
Okay, so my name is Jess White. I am a graduate of Actualize Bootcamp, like the other presenters, and I built an app called Boilerplate, which is designed to help users build grant applications really quickly using libraries of stored boilerplate text. I was inspired to build this app by my prior experience. I worked as a grant writer for several years, and I continue to write grants for local nonprofits on a volunteer basis. I'm actually working with a local refugee organization to write a grant for the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and I'm going to be using this app in partnership with them to develop and finalize that grant. So what I noticed was that smaller nonprofits in particular don't really have the resources to write grants regularly. They don't have dedicated fundraising staff, and it's just sort of a side project that everybody takes on as often as they can, even though most nonprofits are dependent on grant funding for a lot of basic operations and new programs. So I decided to create this app to provide an efficient, standardized way to generate grants so that ideally anyone on staff could build a draft grant application in about an hour. And boilerplates or pieces of text organized by category are stored here. And you can click through into the library and view the grant name and text, edit, save, or delete from the database, which I'm not going to do right now. And when you're ready to build the grant, you can hit new grant, and it will take you to this field, this form to enter basic information about the grant, the name, the purpose, funding organization website, the deadline, which is of course very important. And once you're finished, you hit add new grant. This one I filled out ahead of time, so we could do that right away. And it will take you to this page, which you use to fill in the different sections of the grant application using the boilerplate library. You can choose one from this drop-down menu. So for example, our organization, and it populates with the boilerplate. You can also edit this field with any text. If you wanted to add something else, it would concatenate automatically. Once you're finished, you hit save this section and move on to the next tab. And when you've filled out all of the sections, you hit finalize grant, and it takes you to this screen, which I also filled out ahead of time. So you can see the basic metadata for the grant, and then these appear in editable fields so that you can finalize them, look at them together, eliminate any redundancies. And when you're all finished, you hit printable grant here at the bottom, and it shows you them organized together in one field of text. And finally, you can select create PDF, and it will generate a printable grant. This was the most challenging part of my process. Let me just open this up for you and show you why. You can see that the metadata populates, but the text unfortunately does not. This was something I was not able to finish, and something that I'm really interested in digging into next week. To build this feature, I used a library called JS PDF, which is very well documented in terms of formatting any text passed in as a string to the method. But not very well, the documentation isn't all that built out for formatting HTML elements on the page. and it didn't really like text areas, input forms, anything like that. So I am really interested in working with this in the future to develop formatted PDFs, because it's fun to generate something tangible. It could actually be very useful for grant organizations developing grants. But in the meantime, having these features allows people to very readily look at these proposals in various forms. So that's my project, and I'm happy to take questions.
First, I just want to say that I am so excited that you like took something that's very important to you and practical that you'll be able to use like right after this. So that's really amazing. I guess one of my questions is if you, I know that you said that you really want to get this PDF thing working, but if you did get that working and you had another week, what other features would you like to implement as well?
A Chrome extension. So I talked about how this is very much about doing this rapidly and efficiently, so that you're applying for many grants per year instead of just a few whenever, you know, Milo, the social media intern, has a spare couple of days. And so grant research involves going online and looking for requests for proposals, which are produced by any number of foundations on more or less a random schedule. And a Google Chrome extension that would allow you to just one click fill in the basic information about the organization and the grant and the purpose and the deadline, and then go immediately to the grant boilerplate page, this one here, would facilitate that process. So it would be a very user-friendly and I think helpful feature.
Yeah, sounds great. Congratulations, this is really cool.
Thanks. You were at.
Yeah, I remember meeting you.
I attended. I asked you how you liked being an Actualized Bootcamp graduate, and you were pretty positive, I remember.
I try.
Just to piggyback off of Brittany, I completely agree. Similarly to Jamal, where it's like your background, I think, is so beneficial to building this because you have so much experience in it and you know what pain points there are. And I think it really serves as a great motivator to continue to work on this because you fully recognize how much it can help other people. So I think that's awesome. And I really think you should continue to work on this. And I am just curious, so all of your boilerplate, like all of the text and stuff, is that stuff that you have gotten, like you were putting in this data by hand, or was there certain like API or library they were using to get all this text?
I did hard code this. There isn't a grant random text API, unfortunately. And the idea is that for each organization, it would be customized, almost like archived blog posts, so that you would have a bunch of information about your organization pulled from websites, pulled from prior grants, pulled from shareholder reports, and then you could just sort of mix and match.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think even to further that, what you could do is create a publicly accessible API with some of these texts. So other companies or other like foundations and stuff could, if they have a specific application that they're already trying to do this, they could be using like your text as well. And it could be like a nice little handshake between you and some other like foundations of just making this even more accessible. Just an idea. But yeah, awesome job. Like you did this so well. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats, Jess. I know it's so amazing to me. I know when you mentioned this, to me, it's just like an idea. And to see you have executed it so well is just really amazing. I know you also mentioned to me that you were, speaking with an individual from a nonprofit about this project. Has she had a chance to see it yet?
No, she might be chiming into. She might be tuning in to watch this live. I was hoping during this was probably not realistic. I was hoping during the development process to actually talk to some of my friends whom I'm going to be working with afterwards. I did not have time for that. And this did not have this nice user-friendly wrapper until fairly late in the game. But next week, actually, I'm going to be sitting down with her and actually with a couple of other friends who are also involved in local nonprofits to talk about how I can build this out a little bit better and implement it in their organizations maybe. So.
Well, to me, I'm not a grant writer myself, but to me, the UI is really well done, and I could only imagine that this can save like hours beyond hours of time for organizations, and could only imagine that they'd be very excited about this.
I've had a lot of really positive response, yeah, and I think that's been the most rewarding part of this. I mean, being able to design something that I might actually get to use out there in the world.
Yeah, amazing. Really well done. Congrats, Jess.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, Jess, that was excellent. Absolutely excellent. I'm going to go ahead and take over here by sharing the screen. There we are. And that's the completion of all of our presentations. I know the beginning of this this event was cut off on YouTube, so I wanted to do just a couple shout outs. First of all, congratulations to all of the students from the Bash of the Future cohort, our most recent graduates from the daytime Chicago cohort at Actualize. I'm so proud of everything that you guys have accomplished, both your dedication and your work during the last 12 weeks, as well as these projects, these beautiful projects that you put together, and great presentations. I'd also like to shout out to the TAs who helped pull this group together and helped assist in their learning over the last 12 weeks. Patty for the last 12 weeks, and Nick for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And thank you to the panelists for showing up, Natalie and Brittany, who have been dedicated for years now to Actualize, and it's always a pleasure working with you. And finally, to our CEO, Jay, for facilitating and for supporting everything that we do here at Actualize. Thank you all for joining in.
Can I just interrupt and just do a big shout out to Josh for leading this magnificent cohort?
Thanks, Jay.
There was applause there, unless people couldn't hear it.
It's definitely interesting for all those tuning in. We were really originally planning to do this live, and had to make a modification because of the shelter in effect. So thank you for joining us for the online version of this, and yeah, we appreciate you coming out to support or tuning in to support our graduates. I'm going to go ahead and stop the online live, and me and the students will talk a little bit afterwards. Thank you again. All right, just want to make sure that that is all settled before I.
Good job, everyone.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I still see a live